IDW wasn't given the go-ahead to write a normal book, the way Marvel had with the original Transformers comics. The license was too volatile for that kind of thing. After Devil's Due Publishing's treatment of Hasbro's other properties and their own finances, comic shop owners were wary, and Hasbro wanted the ability to yank the license if things went south with IDW the way they had with, Devil's Due. This led to the shape the IDW line took under Simon Furman, of a series of miniseries that told an ongoing and ever-evolving storyline as if it were just, another regular ongoing title. As Furman was emulating the grounded, intrigue-focused vibe of modern books, modern being the 2000s, like the Ultimates, everyone was copying the Ultimates back then. Ultimate Spider-Man and the Ultimates pretty much shaped the comics landscape back then. But anyway, Furman found it difficult to incorporate fan-favorite characters like Shockwave or Ultra Magnus without distracting from the, quote, very thrilling drama he was building on Earth. This led to a series of one-shot issues known as Spotlights, each one centered around one specific character, usually a Transformer, which, automatically made the books better, because Furman is at his best when he's writing Transformers. When he's writing humans, I just don't think he has the juice. The Spotlights serve to flesh out the universe and plant the seeds for future narratives and characters. Some of them would pay off in spectacular fashion, while others would go nowhere, really. But every one of them is better than Furman's core books. One of the best is Part 1, Spotlight. Shockwave. And there are different ways people order these, but I'm doing my best to cover the Spotlights in the order they were released. Mainly because there are a lot of them, and also because I want to get through the Furman stuff all as one segment. That way these essays can be grouped into cohesive eras. Thus, we begin not with Megatron Origin as the old IDW trades do, but rather with Spotlight. Shockwave. This is arguably the most important issue of Furman's run, as Shockwave's plan has far-reaching consequences, far beyond even Shockwave's massive scope. Everyone loves Shockwave, even if he's mostly ineffectual. I guess all the Decepticons are, but I digress. In G1, he's Megatron's representative on Cybertron, administering the planet on his behalf. Along with Soundwave and Starscream, he's one of the quintessential classic Decepticons, and is usually a key player in any Transformers property. His creepy face, just a single glowing light in his head, brings to mind eerie, malevolent AIs like HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey, where no matter what his monotone, synthesized voice is saying, his lack of a face makes him an eerie, inhuman creature, which is especially off-putting when most of our characters have eyes, mouths, and relatable personalities, despite being robots. Here, Shockwave is a creature of pure, perfect logic. He has surmised that Cybertron is doomed centuries before Thunderwing comes to the same conclusion. While, the scientist Thunderwing decides to create biological pretender venom suits, Shockwave instead sets about seeding other planets with a catalyst, synthesized from raw energon. 13 planets, to be precise. I'll let Shockwave tell it. 600,000 metacycles ago, I see the future. A Cybertron, exhausted, depleted of natural resources. A dead world. I decide to do something about it. I do so unencumbered by emotion or sentimentality, growing new subroutines dedicated solely to the core issue of survival. I consider structure and form, action and reaction, cause and effect, but I neglect to factor in one fundamental universal constant: chaos. I tell no one. I already know I will be ignored, my warnings drowned out in the clamor of civil war. First, I stockpile raw energon. Then I refine and distill it into a potent elemental catalyst. The end product is loaded into special warheads and launched into space. Distant planets with a specific geological profile are selected and seeded. This is Project Regenesis, which leads directly to the Ore 13 that Starscream uses in Infiltration, as well as the other ores we'll see in future stories. Shockwave's plan is secret even from Megatron. Not because Megatron wouldn't understand it, but simply because Shockwave can't be bothered to deal with the politics that are involved with, dealing with Megatron. To Shockwave, even mighty Megatron is just a pawn in his epic game. Part 2. The Dinobots. That isn't a typo. Everyone's favorite Transformers, the Dinobots, are introduced here as the Dinobots, which is a pretty stupid thing to call a gang of loose cannon brutes that are about to take on dinosaur alt modes. I know Furman doesn't want them to have a different name before they became the Dinobots, but hey, I would have rather them just be called those lunatics or Grimlock's Brigade or something. The Dinobots. Characters like Megatron or Bumblebee have the same basic story across depictions. The way Spider-Man always gets bitten by a radioactive spider. The Dinobots are a logistical nightmare for any writer trying to keep the world of the Transformers believable and consistent. Optimus being a truck or Jazz a race car is fine, as, it's conceivable that those forms would have Cybertronian equivalents. But a Tyrannosaurus Rex? A Triceratops? Those aren't just creatures from Earth. They're long extinct when the Autobots crash land. And presumably, no one has ever been there before. This isn't an issue in G1, as Wheeljack builds them on a whim there, which causes even further issues when the show establishes that all Transformers get their sparks from Vector Sigma. But don't tell the Combaticons, I guess. In the old Marvel book, they were actually revived ahead of everyone else and confronted Shockwave in the Savage Land, which is filled with dinosaurs and Shauna the She-Devil. Them becoming dinosaurs there, trapped in a tar pit, is probably the best origin they ever got. In Transformers Animated, the Dinobots are animatronic dinosaurs brought to life by Sari's Allspark key. There are only 3 here: Grimlock, Swoop, and Snarl. In the fall of Cybertron, Grimlock and the others are forcibly turned into Dinobots by old Shocky, who finds those forms because he studies distant planets. One of them being Earth, of course. And, of course, in Transformers Age of Extinction, the 4th classic Michael Bay movie, the Dinobots get no origin whatsoever, and they just show up to fight Optimus Prime and then join him at the end of the movie with zero build-up or logic, because those movies are poorly written, stupid, and, well, Age of Extinction was practically an afterthought by Bay. He was just over those movies by that point. Anyway, the Dinobots' origins might differ, but certain things, like Shockwave, are consistent across depictions. They are always dinosaurs. Although Swoop, a pterodactyl, technically isn't a dinosaur, but at least it isn't a mastodon or a saber-toothed tiger. They are monosyllabic, referring to themselves in the third person.
Dinobots, we've got a job for you.
Me, Grimlock, no like orders.
Me, Slag, no like anything. We really need your help. Why won't you give us a hand?
Me don't know why not. So we help. This time.
And act violently and childishly, which are sometimes synonyms. Oh, and they usually have an issue with authority. Specifically with Optimus Prime. The Dinobots are smarting from a defeat at Shockwave's hands. Having thwarted his attempts to steal an Energon cache they were guarding, Shockwave detonates the volatile fuel, damaging their bodies and their pride. After Optimus, most likely wanting them to focus on something more important, orders them to get over their rage, the Dinobots set off to hunt Shockwave anyway. Part 3. Earth and Transformers History. Ice Age Earth is, for some reason, inhospitable for mechanical beings. Shockwave is able to protect himself because being a genius in a comic book means you can do anything. But the Dinobots are forced to consider a different approach. When the hulking, badass robots are unimpressed with the fauna of Earth, they turn to the fossils they are able to detect with their super high-tech scanners, and take on the first organic forms we'll see for a really long time in these comics. Having destroyed Shockwave's ship, they beam down and assault him. They're glorious, and the art by Nick Roche makes their beast modes look biologically accurate and truly fearsome. Even the Apatosaurus, Sludge. The colors by Josh Burcham are bright and vivid, filling the appealing, truly unique designs with life and pop art majesty. I really want a toy of all of them, like with the decos they get in this panel right here. The G2 colors I have just aren't cutting it. The Dinobots attack Shockwave, breathing fire, shooting missiles and lasers, biting, slamming, and clawing him. Shockwave is completely overwhelmed by their ferocity, as it's a situation he can't reason his way out of. It's chaos, and just when it seems over for the purple psychopath, he shuts down his logic centers, acting as coldly and directly as he can. The battle is over in a flash, with Shockwave using Sludge as a battering ram, and then transforming into his Death Ray alt mode to blast the remaining Dinobots. Grimlock is the last one standing, his T-Rex biological outer body blown off, leaving his mechanical dinosaur form exposed. As his body begins to shut down, overwhelmed by the raw energon on the planet, he lurches toward Shockwave, too angry to just drop. As Shockwave prepares to commandeer the Dinobot ship, it turns out they have the last laugh, as their hatred for him ran so deep, they programmed the ship to fire on them, wiping everyone out in the event of their defeat. Of course, this is not the end for any of these characters, as Shockwave and the fallen Dinobots are buried under rubble and molten rock to lay dormant for hundreds of thousands of years. Also, Furman wrote it, and he doesn't really kill characters. This is a repurposing of Shockwave and the Dinobots' origin in the old Marvel stuff, and part of a fun trope that has become a staple of Transformers media, as writers strive to justify why Optimus is so goddamned committed to being involved in Earth. You know, besides for the Decepticons wanting to drain it of its resources. In Transformers Prime, the relics of the 13 Primes are all over the place, with the Forge of Solus and the Star Saber being found by the Decepticons. Every single live-action movie until Bumblebee features some Cybertronian relic, with the first one centered on the Allspark Cube, the second one a wacky madcap hunt for the Matrix of Leadership, the third, pillars for a space bridge, the fourth, actual Dinobots and some magic unnamed Prime Sword, and the fifth featuring an entire subplot about Transformers backing fucking King Arthur against the Saxons. Yeah, the movie actually happened. There are more examples, but needless to say, the final page depicting modern archaeologists uncovering Shockwave's inert hand jutting out of the sediment, clearly having been buried for at least hundreds of thousands of years, is very much in this tradition, and easily the best of them. I mean, unless you love the minicons from Armada. Part 4, Spotlight, Nightbeat. This story is an example of the best and most frustrating of these Furman spotlights. Nightbeat is an obscure, weird little guy, one who doesn't even feature in any cartoon ever. His blue and yellow colors evoke a cartoon police officer, and our first sight of him on the cover, gun held aloft in one hand, a flashlight pointed at the reader in the other, really drives this home. Nightbeat is an analytical bot who sees himself as a detective. We see him responding to a call from a non-Cybertronian named Kraken. He promises something mysterious, the flight recorder from something called the First Ark, which Nightbeat jumps at. He finds the little robot man dead, with no obvious cause of death. There's a hole in the world, the dead robot involuntarily mutters cryptically. The recorder, which is gone, was found on a mysterious planet called Ultra Prime, between Cybertron and an uncharted region known as the Benzuli Expanse. The Benzuli Expanse. Part 5, the dreaded mystery box. There is a payoff to the whole Gorlum Prime Benzuli Expanse thing, kind of, but beyond the mystery of the first arc, which leads to the big climax of Furman's narrative, and I mean his whole run on these books, the whole thing really only serves to provide fuel for future stories, in and of themselves, like, with nothing deeper going on, while being largely pointless themselves, ultimately. I'm being vague because I intend to cover all of these stories, but suffice it to say, I don't want to spoil them before I get to the actual video for the story, right? But suffice it to say that Gorlum Prime and the Benzuli Expanse are effectively, functionally mystery boxes, whose contents drive not just this issue, but many stories forward. Nobody likes the mystery box. The term came into, common parlance after J.J. Abrams, one of the writers on Lost, and, those awesome Disney Star Wars movies that I totally love and don't hate. I hate those movies. Yeah, so I'm just gonna roll the clip.
Myself drawn to infinite possibility and that sense of potential, and I realized that mystery is the catalyst for imagination. Now, it's not the most groundbreaking idea, but when I started to think that maybe there are times when mystery is more important than knowledge, I started getting interested in this. And so I started thinking about Lost and the stuff that we do, and I realized, oh my God, mystery boxes are everywhere in what I do. Meaning what you think you're getting, than what you're really getting.
I don't need to tell you why this is a stupid idea, If you're gonna write a story with, a mystery at the heart of it, I don't know what the answer is, and you don't even care to know because we're just never gonna answer that question, well, your story has no soul. It's fucking stupid. And, the fact that there are mystery boxes in these Furman books really just... It's one of the major problems I have with it. So let's talk about Gorlum Prime a bit more. Nightbeat arrives on Gorlum Prime. It's a planet where the organic inhabitants are undergoing a jump in their cultural development, incorporating technology into their bodies as they shift from fully organic to biomechanical creatures. Nightbeat, our intrepid observer, speculates that Cybertron, whose origins are shrouded in mystery, could have similar origins. Considering the changes the IDW line had introduced up to this point, this is a pretty tantalizing prospect, and a burning question that serves to engage the reader's own curiosity. Furman is really great at this kind of thing, dropping hints and raising questions that he might answer or follow up on, or just leave for future writers to just ignore altogether. Writing mystery boxes, it's a real skill. Especially, I guess it's cool that some of them pay off, but anyway. When Nightbeat follows Kraken's logs to find the site of his excavation, Nightbeat is inevitably captured by mysterious Cybertronians, shut down, and tampered with. He awakens enough to hear shadowy figures discussing the expansion of something as they mess with the machinery in his head. The term Dead Universe is uttered, and then it's all black. Nightbeat awakens with no memory of being lured to Kraken's ship or his ill-fated adventure on Gorlum Prime, long before being called to Earth by Optimus. This issue is a great read, and in a vacuum is thrilling and bursting with potential. But while Nightbeat is awesome, we get precious little of the tiny Headmaster toy. At least most of the burning mysteries go somewhere, unlike the ones in Part 6, Spotlight, Hot Rod. Hot Rod! Hot Rod is a breath of fresh air. After Optimus's stentorian, regal drama, and whatever the hell Infiltration was supposed to be, we have Hot Rod riding a meteor down to a planet's surface. It's an insane, almost suicidal way to avoid detection. And he's absolutely joyous as his ride burns up on re-entry, and he powers up to create a force field so he doesn't fucking go up in flames as he crash lands, passing out cold, straight into a flashback that's every bit as reckless and awesome as his entry into the issue. In charge of a crack team of Autobot commandos, Hot Rod is tasked with infiltrating an ancient alien fortress called the Omega Bunker with the goal of acquiring a relic known only as the Magnificence, described as some kind of all-seeing oracle. How they came to know about it, and what they plan to do with it, are not mentioned, and while the stupid Magnificence comes back later, it isn't really that big of a deal. It's what you call a MacGuffin, or an object, device, or event that is necessary to the plot and the motivation of the characters. Insignificant, unimportant, or irrelevant in itself. Like a mystery box, but less destructive to the long-term fabric of a story, usually. MacGuffins are important to stories, especially science fiction and fantasy stories. The Holy Grail is a good example. It's integral to Arthurian lit, driving many legendary quests and lessons, and sometimes Indiana Jones movies. The Cosmic Cube, or Tesseract to losers, drives the Red Skull of Captain America's stories. And that's just vaguely gesturing in the direction of comic books' usage of MacGuffins to drive the action of their stories. Really good MacGuffins, like the One Ring in The Lord of the Rings, or the Matrix in Transformers 1, will exert pressure and development on the characters and world, while really lame ones, like that fucking Palm Pilot from Infiltration or the Sith Dagger in The Rise of Skywalker, are just an excuse to get the characters running and gunning. They could be swapped out for any other plot device and are ultimately forgettable. Part 7, Second Place. Hot Rod was created for the 1986 Transformers movie, which saw Optimus Prime and most of the Autobots from Season 1 and 2 killed off. Hot Rod was the protagonist of the movie, a young, brightly colored speedster, complete with painted flames and twin exhausts. He's introduced as the future, impulsive, capable, not yet ready. His interference during Optimus Prime's battle with Megatron leads directly to Prime's death, and when he's reforged into Rodimus Prime, he inherits the leadership without inheriting the certainty that made Optimus, well, Optimus Prime. Season 3 of G1 turns this into his defining trait. Rodimus is competent, even heroic, but perpetually unsure. He carries the Matrix, and with it, his guilt. And his inadequacy. The movie is commonly seen as the peak of G1, as it takes the themes and elements of the cartoon and pushes them to a level of sophistication that the episodic, toyetic TV show simply wasn't able to reach back in the kids' cartoon landscape of the 1980s. Season 3, which followed the movie, is where the franchise hit hard times, and where most modern fans tune out. It's one thing to kill Ironhide, Windcharger, and Ratchet, and replace them with RC, Springer, and Ultra Magnus, but quite another to dramatically kill Brave, Almighty, Wise Daddy Truck, and replace him with the humble, insecure Rodimus Prime. I love Rodimus. His defeatist, overwhelmed attitude is a hilarious commentary on the indefatigable, incorruptible types of heroes that infest these kinds of shows. While Optimus is far from the type of shallow idiot that Lion-O or He-Man are, he's cut from the same cloth. Positive, almost to a fault. Patient and unconditionally loving to his squad of colorful idiots, while gifted with mythical, seemingly limitless power. How can you hold it against Rodimus for being so cynical? He's supposed to be replacing Optimus fucking Prime, the one toy from the 80s that survived Turtle Mania and still keeps trucking over 4 decades later. While the end of Season 3 brought back Optimus and subsequent shows like the Headmasters and Armada and so on would default to just having new versions of Daddy Truck, Old Hot Rod was relegated to cameos or just not existing at all. That's why this Spotlight issue is a fantastic introduction to him, with Hot Rod going on to have an extremely long and storied life within the pages of the IDW comics. Boy, I can't wait to get to More Than Meets the Eye. Here in his Spotlight, we see him lose his entire team, a move Furman only reserves for characters he doesn't plan to ever come back to. There's only one survivor, Dealer, and in the present day, Hot Rod is hell-bent on saving him from a Decepticon prison called Styx. Through subterfuge and sheer courage, he saves him, but little does he know, Dealer is secretly Double Dealer now. And the entire thing was an epic setup by some Decepticon mook called Bonsaitron. As I said, the plot really goes nowhere, but giving us a young and adventurous Hot Rod with the former failure hanging over his head is the real win here. Translating his upbeat G1 character sheet into pathos that will serve as a powerful foundation for later stories. Part 8, Spotlight Ultra Magnus. There's no gentle way to say this. Ultra Magnus fucks. He's a big, hulking robot, decked out in primary colors. He's voiced by Robert Stack in the 86 movie, and he's packing so much heat, I'm surprised he doesn't just explode whenever he opens his mouth. There's no doubt about it. I love my Transformers like I love my women. Big, blocky, and uncompromising. He's also another movie character, which means he's part of the dreaded Season 3 crew. His appearances outside of G1 are sporadic, to say the least, but he's an animated, where Magnus is a rank above Prime, and he is the de facto ruler of Cybertron. He's also in, Transformers Prime, the different show, while he's in Car Robots and other Japanese shows. He's largely faded from the mainstream, although he's a prominent player in the Skybound books. It's weird that he never appeared in the Michael Bay stuff, but considering where those movies went, maybe it's for the best. Anyway, Ultra Magnus' role is far different than it was in G1 here. We meet him as he moves in to apprehend a sniveling Decepticon bastard named Swindle, who, speaking of blocky bastards, is another favorite of mine. Swindle is selling Cybertronian weapons to some alien warlord, and we meet our third organic species in this series. After the Nebulans and humans, that is. Ultra Magnus is the same stalwart, Captain Picard-styled character as his G1 depiction, unwilling to compromise, but here he is notably not directly in service to the Autobot cause. Part 9, the Tyrest Accord. Ultra Magnus announces himself as the duly appointed enforcer of the Tyrest Accord, and tells Swindle and all of the aliens defending him that he is under arrest, but will be turned over to the regional Decepticon command hub to be court-martialed. At first glance, why would Ultra Magnus, sporting an Autobot logo on his right shoulder, turn a captured Decepticon over to any kind of con command? Magnus is not acting on behalf of Optimus Prime. The Tyrest Accord is a treaty between the Autobots and Decepticons, which specifically banned the sale of Cybertronian technology to other races. It was brokered by a mysterious guy named Tyrest, whom we'll meet in future stories. What's cool about this backdrop is that, much like the details of Stormbringer, the Autobots and Decepticons are established as complex groups with splintered command structures. In any given cartoon, a guy like Swindle would love to be captured and given back to Megatron, as Megatron would really have no problem arming other races to help him fight the Autobots, just like the US and Russia during the Cold War, or these days. Here, though, not only is Swindle a liability for a greater Decepticon cause and wants the sympathy of the galaxy, but even the Autobots are forced to the negotiating table for war crimes, presumably. The story here is excellent, with Swindle offering Ultra Magnus the location of a hideous, deadly Decepticon, the monstrous Skorponok, who is doing what Swindle is doing, but on a much higher scale. Despite his misgivings, Magnus allows Swindle to go in return for the information as he lands on Nebulos, projecting his holoform into the corporate building where Skorponok is operating, the Zarak Corporation, which should raise an eyebrow for anyone familiar with Skorponok, not the little guy from Beast Wars or the other little guy from the Bayverse, is hiding a mysterious project. Magnus finds a Nebulan super soldier sleeping in a tube, his body interlaced with Cydraulics, Cybertronian servers, and trauma buffers. What the purpose of this project is remains a mystery, but Magnus is horrified by it, transforming and attacking the building when his holoform is found out. I think it's cool also that, when they zap his holoform, his truck mode feels it, and you see him talking through his radio to himself. It's kind of great. Anyway, as Magnus announces himself, Skorponok shows his terrible Scorpion alt mode. Magnus is one of the few robots that can challenge Skorponok on his own, but he's clearly bitten off more than he can chew as he's tossed aside and blasted by the monster's stinger. When Zarak, the Nebulan native who is the face of Scorpy's operation, runs onto the scene, begging them to stop before they destroy all their hard work, he's mortally wounded by Skorponok's stinger, which prompts the gigantic Decepticon to cut his losses and flee. We're left with the shot of Magnus arresting Swindle again. The conniving Decepticon sneers and asks, "Let's deal," once more, as Magnus wonders how far he'll go to get the job done. He resents cutting corners and hates compromising, even though sometimes the only way to clean up a mess is to get your hands dirty. For a character whose main job was to teach Rodimus Prime and the young audience lessons in leadership and responsibility, this issue is a heck of a glow-up and an incredible introduction to what is simply the best version so far of a character who started as a simple repaint of an Optimus toy. Part 10. Looking to the future. So there we are, the first batch of spotlights. There are different orders to read things in, but I decided this was the best time to cover them, in between Stormbringer and Escalation, which is the next story of the Furman era, which we're still in. I've decided that I'm going to start covering the Energon universe, which is a line of comic books being produced by Robert Kirkman's Skybound Company, and published by Image. My next video will be covering the first arc of Void Rivals by Robert Kirkman, which is the first entry in this new universe. It's excellent and leads directly into Transformers. We'll also be covering the G.I. Joe books, starting with the Cobra Commander mini. It's all great stuff, and will be released alongside my IDW reviews. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed watching. I am also writing a review of Escalation, so the IDW stuff isn't being forgotten. I also want to cover the Energon universe also. Out of curiosity, are you reading the Energon universe? How do you feel about it so far? It's been pretty crazy, hasn't it? If you are reading the Energon universe, are you a fan of G1? Do you like how, it's taking elements of G1 and amping it up? Leave a comment below. I'd love to talk to you about it. Either way, like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my links below. Till all are one.